The movie begins by showing a man named Brian. He is having lunch in a restaurant along with his wife. The two of them appear to be very happy together and are enjoying their time pleasantly. Next, the scene shifts to a second location where an old man named John is seen bursting firecrackers. John's friend Terry asks him how he is and whether the firecrackers are working properly. John replies that sending them is not the problem, but doing it from this side is not the right way. He says that if he sends a message now, no one will question him about it. He adds that nowadays everyone wants guarantees and that he never got any good work after retirement, unlike Terry, who has a good job. Hearing this, Terry begins to think about his own job. It is shown that Terry works in a restaurant as a cook, and even he frequently gets scolded by his boss. Terry's life had nothing more than his job, and he too was frustrated. The movie then introduces Danny. Danny is approached by a bank officer who asks him to repay his loan. Danny angrily calls the bank people thieves and walks away. All of these men, Brian, John, Terry, and Danny, had grown old. None of them had much money, nor did they have any significant work left in their lives. Later, these friends meet outside the clinic where Brian's wife had passed away. He was deeply saddened by her death. Brian, Terry, John, and Danny had all been friends since their younger days. Brian tells the others that he needs to find a hobby now because he is alone. Terry suggests gardening, mentioning how Brian had been talking about it for a long time. Brian explains that he has many tools for gardening now and that he is retired as well. Terry then brings up something important. He mentions that inside the locker room of that place, there is a large amount of cash and jewelry. He says Danny can help with this work because he is still young. Brian, Terry, and John do not realize that a man named Basil, who is also standing nearby, overhears their entire conversation. Later, Basil meets Brian and says that although they have met only twice, he is saddened to hear about Brian's wife. The next day, Brian wakes up in his house and finds himself completely alone. He feels lonely and uncomfortable. Then the doorbell rings, and Basil is standing outside. Brian invites Basil inside. Brian tells Basil that he still cannot believe his wife is gone and that she will never open the door for him again. Later, Basil and Brian go out to a pub to drink. Basil tells Brian that he works in fiber optic telecommunications. He says that he has come to discuss the same topic that everyone was talking about at the funeral. He explains that he has not been to Hatton Garden in the last 50 years. Basil adds that if Brian does not want to be involved in this job, someone else can do it instead. He also mentions that he knows a person who has a key to the office there because he works in that business. Brian asks why Basil didn't tell him this earlier. Basil replies that he was nervous. This entire conversation is about planning a robbery at Hatton Garden. Hatton Garden is a well-known area in London famous for its jewelry business. The plan is to steal diamonds and jewelry worth millions from there. The next day, Brian gets ready and goes to Hatton Garden. The area is filled with numerous diamond and jewelry shops, and there are cameras everywhere. After arriving, Brian asks Basil about the friend he had mentioned the day before, the one who has the key. Basil explains that his friend's husband used to deal in gold, and his office was in that very building. Inside that building, the woman explains that one day her husband was killed. After his death, she had to go to his office and clear everything there. She needed to get rid of every item connected to him. She trusted Basil's friend completely, so she gave him the key because she could not manage everything alone. She emphasizes that she was helpless at that time. Later, Brian takes Basil to the shops and explains the qualities of diamonds. He then tells Basil about diamonds and polished diamonds in detail, saying that all the diamonds kept in these shops would be stored inside a large locker room. Basil asks what the total value of those diamonds would be. Brian replies that the value would be in crores. Basil then asks how many cameras would be inside the locker room. Brian says not too many, only a few flashlights. Just enough for them to work with. That would be more than enough for their plan. Basil then shows Brian the office that belongs to the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Building. Basil already knows the code for that office. Brian enters the office and says that they should not go toward the placement area. Basil replies that they can shut it off, but Brian asks why it needs to be done. Basil explains that shutting it off will lead them straight to the secure door. He also tells Brian that 20 years ago, a man once tried to steal in the same way, but the security company stopped him. Brian then measures the lock of the door that leads down to the ground floor. He takes the measurements so he can have a duplicate key made. Basil further explains that if they stop the lift on the third floor, the entire shaft below, almost 20 feet down, will belong to them. Terry worries about how they will get inside the locker room. Basil says that they cannot enter through the door. They will have to drill a hole through the wall using a drilling machine. For that, they will need more thieves. Danny takes photos of the lift system on his mobile phone. Basil informs everyone that the staff will have a 2-day holiday soon, and on those days, no one will be at the building. That is when they can execute the plan. Later, Danny, Terry, and John gather when Brian calls them. All of them had been criminals in their youth, robbers, thieves, and troublemakers, and the police constantly chased them in those days. Brian shows them pictures of Hatton Garden and the office. He explains that during holidays, the commercial companies in the area remain closed, so there will be no one around. They also will not need weapons. Terry complains that there will be no thrill in this job and that it will be boring. Brian replies that it will not feel boring as long as they do not get caught. He adds that there is a monitoring alarm system, but his young friend can turn it off using the key. Brian asks who this young man is and why he is helping them. Basil says that they need him. Soon after, Basil brings the young man to meet all of them. The young man looks at everyone in a strange way. Basil explains the entire plan to the group, and everyone begins preparing for their assigned tasks. Brian and John start observing the area from a building across the street. Basil prepares everything, and Terry examines the lift system to figure out how to stop it on the 3rd floor. They measure how big the hole must be to allow a person to pass through it. Danny collects the necessary tools, and all of them prepare for the robbery. That night, they leave their homes to carry out the heist. Basil opens the office door while Danny and Basil enter carefully, avoiding the street cameras. Danny interferes with the lift system and stops it on the 3rd floor. Basil uses the key made by the bank to open the office door. After unlocking it, he opens the back doors of the building and brings in all the tools and the team members. John sits at the window of the opposite building, keeping watch so he can warn them if anyone approaches. They stop the lift midway and climb onto it. They open the area that leads toward the locker room. Someone reminds the others that once the alarm starts, they will have only 7 seconds to shut it off before the security guards arrive. Danny climbs up 1.5 meters and goes into the office to cut the signal cables. The alarms stop. Meanwhile, Carl and Terry break the wooden door that leads toward the locker room. Once inside, Basil opens the next iron door. They step in and Brian can see the alarm machine. They also notice that the blade cutting machine has corpse-like metal remains around. The light inside is still. The alarm outside suddenly begins ringing, and the circular cutting machine inside had not completely shut down. When Danny points this out, Basil quickly goes outside and turns the alarm off. Meanwhile, Brian, Danny, Terry, and the others reach the locker room area and begin drilling a hole through the wall using a large drilling machine. But outside, a police car arrives after hearing the alarm. Seeing this, John, who is keeping watch from across the building, alerts everyone. Hearing that police are nearby, all of them immediately stop working so that no sound escapes. After inspecting the surroundings, the police officer eventually leaves. As soon as he is gone, the team resumes drilling through the wall. After making a large hole, they see that a cabinet is placed inside the locker room. Carl uses a machine to test it and tries to push the cabinet using the pressure from the tool, but their machine malfunctions and stops working. This causes an argument among them as everyone begins blaming each other. They accuse one another of ruining the plan, saying that removing a professional criminal from the plan was a mistake and that the whole plan was poorly designed. Brian stops the argument, and they all decide that they will return later with a new machine. The next day, Brian is at John's house when an elderly man named Billy arrives. John introduces Billy to Brian and says that he works at the fish market and might be able to help them with the job. Brian becomes angry and asks how many people John has told about their plan. He warns that everything will be ruined if too many people know. He angrily declares that he will not return for this job again and leaves. Danny tells the others that Brian said he would not return. Hearing this, Terry says that their work was ruined last night because of Brian's planning. He adds that he is doing all this for himself, not for Brian. Danny and Terry then go to the mall to buy a new machine. At night, Carl, Danny, and Terry return to continue the robbery, but the outer door is locked, and the key is still with Basil. On the other side, Brian is sitting inside a shop when Billy asks him what he should do to get good money. Billy offers to give Brian 50% of his share. Brian then writes some locker room numbers on a piece of paper and tells him that these numbers belong to traders. Brian explains that inside those numbered lockers, Billy will find plated diamonds worth a lot of money. He warns him that the packets marked specially will contain extremely valuable blood diamonds, and the packets with a red dot will contain diamonds of no value. Brian also warns Billy that these diamonds belong to very dangerous people, and that after taking them, Many men will come after Billy and might even kill him. Billy becomes afraid and asks if he should leave the country after stealing those diamonds. Brian says that once he takes them, many people will chase him. Danny scolds Billy and sends him away. After hearing everything from Brian, Basil sneaks into the building and opens the door. Danny and Terry set up the machine in the hall and push the cabinet again, causing it to fall over this time. Basil and Daniel then enter the locker room and begin breaking the lockers one by one. They fill bags with the jewelry and money inside the lockers. Once the bags are full, they carry them out of the locker room. Terry begins placing the stolen goods into the large dustbin they brought. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Basil also opens the lockers Brian mentioned earlier and secretly keeps the packets with special markings for himself. He puts the packets with red dots into the general bags. Basil then breaks several more lockers, removing the jewelry and money, and fills additional bags. All of it is placed inside the big dustbin, and they wheel it out of the building. The next morning, the police learn about the robbery and begin investigating. Police officers give statements to the media, saying the thieves were extremely intelligent, powerful, and quick. Television and radio channels report continuously that a robbery took place last night at Hatton Garden. They add that the exact amount stolen is still unknown, but it is believed that the thieves stole around £300 million, making it the largest robbery in British history. An officer comments that the thieves cannot be fools because they must have fled the country already. She says that there is no place in the country where such expensive jewelry and polished diamonds can be quickly sold. Meanwhile, Basil, Daniel, John, and the old man known as Astley sit together to divide the stolen money. Basil separates the packets into two piles, regular ones and the special ones. Watching this, Basil mocks the fairness of the whole situation, insisting that the 5 of them will divide the loot equally. He even suggests giving a share to Brain, because the idea originally came from him. Hearing this, everyone bursts into laughter. Terry teases him, saying, "You wore funny clothes, and for whatever little you did, you can take only that much." Eddie argues back, reminding them that he had the main key and disabled the alarm. Without him, nothing would have been possible. But the rest refuse to give him any major share. They scare him, shouting and threatening him until he panics. In fear, he grabs only a small amount of jewelry and cash and leaves. The remaining men divide the money among themselves. Terry loads his share into Billy's car and sends him away with it. Danny hides his portion in a grave at the cemetery and warns Carl never to reveal anything about the heist. Carl reluctantly agrees. Later, Basil meets Brain and asks how much money he received. The reply is vague, just enough to keep him quiet. Basil then asks why he went along with the unfair division. The man tells him his friends betrayed him, and he ended up with nothing. But he vows to take what he deserves, even if they refuse to give him his share. Meanwhile, the police continue their investigation. Officers sift through CCTV footage, hoping to identify suspicious movements. One female officer finds a clip of Terry entering the building earlier in the afternoon to inspect the lift system and returning shortly after. They track the car number captured in the footage and discover that the vehicle belongs to John. Immediately, the police put him under surveillance. As they dig deeper, they also obtain Danny's details. The CCTV footage shows he was present during the day of the robbery. His records match, and he too becomes a prime suspect. The police still had no information about Basil. All they had was a single photo from a British CCTV camera. Danny and Terry took their hidden money and jewelry to the car park and waited for Billy to arrive. After a short while, John and others also arrived with their cars. Billy transferred the jewelry and money from his car into John's car. The police wanted to catch all of them together with the stolen goods, so the officers prepared to make the arrests. The police instructed their team that although the criminals were old and could not run fast, they still needed to be cautious of Danny because he was dangerous. They said that Brian was the leader of the group and also dangerous, as he had once been involved in a police officer's murder case. Because of that, Brian disliked the police, and the police disliked him as well. The police started moving in to arrest them. Terry and John went to Terry's house with the stolen money and jewelry. Teddy picked up Danny's bag and said it felt much lighter than before. Danny replied that yes, his bag was lighter, unlike Terry's. Meanwhile, Brian was waiting for everyone at his house. He then went to Billy to collect the jewelry and money Billy had stored. When Danny and Terry saw the money that Brian brought back, they noticed that much of the jewelry was missing. Seeing this, Danny became furious and shouted at John for hiding part of it. Just then, the police surrounded Brian's house. Brian called John and Terry, saying, "I waited for you for so long, and I will keep waiting for you." After saying this, Brian angrily broke his phone. When he looked around, he saw that the police had arrived at his house, so he gave up and surrendered. Meanwhile, the police also arrested Danny and John. The officers also arrested Billy and Carl. Later, all of them were brought to court and the movie ends here. Brian, Danny, John, Terry, Carl, and Billy were all declared guilty criminals and were sentenced to years in prison. Terry was attacked in jail and was killed. The court ordered that his body be returned to his family. After this decision, the prison authorities released Brian in 2018 as part of early release instructions. He appealed against the decision regarding his remaining sentence. This robbery later became known as the biggest robbery ever recorded in British criminal history. In the end, I want to know how your experience was. Tell me in the comments what you liked, what surprised you, and how you felt while watching this story. If you enjoyed it, help me reach the target of 2,000 likes. Your one like makes a big difference.